Yes, good evening to everybody. Welcome to the class of the International Human Rights Law. And we are dealing about the international relations and its impact on the human rights. And now anyone can unmute and read what I posted on the screen. Yeah, it is just gone, but yes, this is the thing. Yes, anyone can unmute and read what I posted on the screen. Okay, there may be the internet problem, I believe. Okay, I myself will read. Yes, Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948 is the mother of the human rights protection. So that is the one thing I told in the last class, that there are two charters, covenants are made, which has given the strength for the implementation of the human right violation sanctions. And there is a mechanism that will made. Number one, International Covenant on the Civil and Political Rights. Then number two, International Covenant on the Economic and Social and Cultural Rights. Plus Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which are weak at the time when it is made, but it became strong because these two instruments has given the power to its implementation more, and that's why we can say it's the International Bill of Rights. The combination of the three are set together, International Bill of Rights, we'll say. Okay, now let us see. Okay, I will stop my radio. Yeah, now let us see that what we left yesterday class. Yes, yesterday class we dealt on the two and three that we are going to deal it. And the third one, effective production of the of correctiveness requires a choice cooperation between the UN's political setup, which deals with the international peace and security. So a collectiveness requires a close-up action cooperation between the United Nations members with the political setup and which deals with the international peace and security. So, what is the purpose of it making all this cooperation and setup to achieve the international peace and security? And it is a judicial branch which is turned to the promotion and production of the human rights. The overall gist is it is the promotion and production of the human rights. Likewise, the relation of the economic and social and cultural rights needs the full commitment, relevant development-oriented agencies, including the international financial institutions, IFIs, yet mainstreaming human rights as envisaged in the whole UN system of the governance has above all resulted in the document that reflect policy brief reports and policy guidelines rather than the genuine operationalization of the human rights at all levels of the layers. That is the Norman and the Zaidi book it is given. Overall, the promotion and cooperation to achieve what? To achieve the peace and security. And this will be possible and this will make it out for the promotion and production of the human rights. So this is the gist of it. The fourth point is there has not been a much interest in global human rights as a common mission of the United Nations. I repeat, there has not been much interest in global human rights as a common mission of the United Nations. Of course, there is a desire would be there, but actually the support also be needed over there for to achieve such a target. As envisaged in the Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it make. In the beginning of that, I already told you that when the UDHR is having the not that much sharpness, not much emphasis for the breach, if any state will did it, what would be the action will be taken? Because it was loosely compacted and prepared over there. But the other two covenants made them strong for the implementation. So that's why called as the Bill of Rights. Instead, member states appear to believe setting up their own human rights mechanism. Of course, the member state, they would like to make it their own mechanism by keeping their, by making the bilateral treaty or multilateral treaty and see that the production and the promotion and production of the human rights would be there in the regions where they are the members of the charter or a treaty or a protocol. And not as a complementary to the international framework, but as an alternate. It is not the complementary, but it's an alternate way that they want to also the protect and promote the human rights, rather than committing themselves to truly supranational supervision and enforcement. Of course, 1 plus 1, 2, and 2 plus 1, 3, then it will be built up strong. Hence, it will an alternative method could be made it over there so that the human rights protection will be strong enough on the earth planet. Strikingly, even in the academic circle, the grounds of the human rights, as expressed in the first article of the Declaration, are rarely discussed except for philosophical reflections on human dignity. Of course, it is said that when the human rights are there, and definitely human dignity would be maintained. Otherwise, the right is useless when there is no dignity. I repeat, the right is useless, futile when there is no human dignity. So, the downside of that obvious endeavor to avoid the discussion that might touch upon the axioms of the global universality is that concrete human rights tend to get detached from the fundamental values that lie at the core of each distinct human rights. Of course, he has made it a very analytical study over here, and where they made the axioms of the global universality and the concrete human rights tend to detach from the fundamental values that lie at the core of the each distinct human rights. Let us take freedom of opinion and expression as an example here. Its ground, liberty, is often interpreted in such a way that first part of the Article 1 of the Declaration is the disassociated from the second. The conception of the freedom becomes unhinged from an accompanying conception people as moral human beings. Of course, they made analyzed people are moral human beings, but they are not hinged, not the cooperation with each other, implying the personal responsibility. Consequently, through the above interpretation, the grand principle of the human dignity loses its significance. When there is no rights protection would be there, and when there is no reciprocal respect would be there, then the human dignity will be definitely it will be lost. It will be lost. Indeed, certain interpretations which utilize the Article 19 of the Declaration as a license to use offending language to the disseminate, dignifying offending materials such as the pornography, tend to alienate the huge portion of the necessary constituency for the human rights mission, while also contributing towards the political constituency for relativist positions such as the Asian or the Islamic or human rights. So they made it analyze the Asian and Islamic human rights by making the separating it so that there would be a strong protection promotion of the human rights would be there. So that would be the main idea. The fifth point is Karibusana Sekinapal. Fifth point is international human rights are not yet sufficiently focused on economic, political, and social and cultural aspect. They made it very much clear the defects of the international human rights. They say international human rights are not yet sufficiently focused on what grounds are economic, political, social, and cultural aspects of the distinct environment in which these rights have to be realized. Of course, environment will be the different, the place where the people are born over there and brought up over there, and either is a fully developed that area or a semi-developed area or underdeveloped area. That depends upon that one also. We can say how he brought up. As a whole international venture for the protection of the human dignity against the abuse of the power is based on well-functioning legal system that connected the enforceable national law to international law. So, national law to international law, when the machinery is very much strong enough to implementation is there, then the international peace will be maintained at the time. So, nation has to make a move to see that it will be implemented. So, national law to the international law, efforts to realize these rights primarily require the creation of the good governance based on the rule of law. So when you get the good governance based on the rule of law, because all are equal in the eye of the law. So in order to overcome the obstacles of the connected to the failing and dictatorially rooted, not rooted, ruled states. So dictatorially ruled states, because of their might and their might, they do have it, hence they can say it's a right. In order to overcome the obstacles connected to the failing and dictatorial ruled states at the time, well, functioning the economies and policies to overcome the cultural prejudice are essential at the time. When a dictatorial rule will be states, they will ruling the other states and making them not to flourish also, and try to take away the wealth from that state by investment and employing their own people, and both the cream they are eating and as well as the only buttermilk is giving to the local people, and the cream they are eating, including the, we will say cream means yagi, if I don't not be mistaken. So overcome the cultural prejudice are essentially that would entail the shift of resources from purely judicial action towards the policies supporting the political transformation. So whenever there is a judicial purely juridical action towards the policies are necessary. If there is no juridical action would be there and supporting the political transformation, the political transformation will not take place, because there should be somebody would be there which will push it and sanction it if it is violated over there. So these are the things with the fifth one. Then now let us, Sakina, you unmute and read what is the six, this up to this extent. Yes.
Devoid of global governance, economic globalization has increased socioeconomic inequality while creating an adverse environment for the realization of economic, social, and cultural rights. Simultaneously, non-state agencies or actors become more relevant in the world international
Endeavor.
endeavor, yes, for structure, protection of human dignity. Effective effective check on human rights affects actions by multinational corporation (MNCs) is primarily the duty of the state under whose responsibilities these companies operate.
Yes, the sixth point made it clear. Divide of the global governance. Economic globalization has increased. And avoiding the global governance, the economic globalization has increased. Socioeconomic inequalities are raised over there because of the globalization. There is a disparity become more in the social conditions and economic conditions and the inequalities, while creating an adverse environment for the realization of the economic. So when the gap is increased more in the socio-economic inequalities, then the realization would be there. Definitely it will have impact on the economic aspect, social aspect, and cultural aspect. Simultaneously, non-state agencies, so they are the not member of the a treaty or a council or a charter, non-state agencies are there, or the actors become more relevant in the whole international endeavor for structural production of the human dignity. So naturally, these people will be more powerful. Number one, they will activate. Number two, and they are internationally endeavor for the structural production of human dignity. They will maintain it, and effective check on, and who will do all those checking, the effective check on the human affecting action by the multinational companies. Of course, why the multinational companies comes and invest over there? Yes, because they do also get the profit, and they do have the good relations with the other states also, and their movement will be very much easy to them, and there is no problem at all. And these multinational companies having even sometimes they will control the government also. It means politicians, government, and the head of the institution of the party. So, is a primarily duty of the state under whose responsibility these companies operate. So, for instance, the MNC company operates in Tanzania. At that instance, it is the responsibility of the state of the Tanzania to see that they should not violate the human rights, and they would try to protect and promote the human rights. They have to see it. Who? The state, and where this company is established. While at the level of the states, an increased focus on the MNC violation of the human rights is clearly noticeable. If the MNCs are more, would be there, a different culture would be there, and there will be a cultural threat and a social threat, economic threat, and as well as the bodily threat also there, because they try to molest the women and try to abuse the even children. While at the level of the state, increased focus on the immense violation of the human rights in clearly noticeable. If the immenses are more, violations are more. If the people are more, fighting is definitely would be there, or inequality definitely would be there. So international regulations will have to follow if violations such as globally intolerable level it comes over there. At that instance, intolerable level is reached over there, such a violation, then the international regulation should be followed over there at the time. Otherwise, UN Security Council will send the sanctions, economic sanctions, political sanctions, and even the sanctions not to buy the product of a particular country. No export and import also. Notably, even international government organizations such as the World Trade Organization, WTO, distance themselves from the responsibility of human rights implementation. Even the WTO also they say thank you very much, and they will not take that much responsibility for the human rights implementations. The seventh point is read the seventh point from this to this area. Sakina.
In the aftermath of 11 September 2001, the world has seen a strong revival of exceptionalism in respect of international law. Exceptionalism in terms generally used to describe the way and means by which states empty themselves from the international legal and political order.
Yes. Though, what is happened on the 11th September? What is happened on the 11th September? Is it not the WTO, the World Trade Organization, the buildings were collapsed by the terrorists? Is it or not? Yes? Say yes or no. Sakina,
Yes.
what happened on the 11th September? You don't know the 11th September? Okay, let us see where I am right or wrong. We can make it up. 11th September incident. 11th September incident in USA, World Trade Organization, WTO. 11th September attack history summary. The attacks against the New York City and Washington caused extensive death, destruction, triggered the enormous US efforts to combat the terrorism on the 11th September. It happened on the 11th September. That is the aircraft crashed into the World Trade Center in the New York City. Two towers were inferno in the middle. A third crashes into the Pentagon, the Arlington County, Virginia, and fourth into the field near the Sankesville, Pennsylvania. So, World Trade Organization, there is 11th September, the attack would be there. So, that is the point here he raised. 11th September later, world has seen a strong revival, exceptionalisms, and international law. And this, what is the exceptionalism, is a term generally used to describe the way and means by which states exempt themselves from the international legal and political order. At the time, some states will be exempted. Then that was the reason. But as a rule of law, say no state should have any exception because every state should be treated as a well and the equal treatment would be there. The United States is the most obvious example of state-based exceptionalism, because they are the mighty countries and they will try to exploit the exceptionalism that they will not be treated alike. Even the Security Council permanent members also sometimes they will enjoy the exceptionalism. The rule may be applicable to others, but not to those countries. Within the setting of the problem, within the setting of the problematic, that concern has here the phrase exceptionalism may be used to describe any attempt to exempt citizen and institution from democratic public political authority and its law. So, such exceptionalism, if it is there, there is a rivalry would be there from the state to state, and policies and actual decisions based on assumed incompatibility with the national principles. So, in the wake of the global war on terror, as the Pentagon termed United States response after the 11th September, even rights very close to the core of the human dignity, such as the due process and the prohibition of the torture, has been grossly and systematically violated. After that incident happened over there, the due process will not be followed. So naturally, without processing the due process law, by giving the notice and hearing from them, they try to attack it, and there is a dire human rights violations are occurred over there because of the 9th September. Later on, such an incidents happen. Highly problematic from a human rights perspective is the exceptionalist spillover to the rest of the world, including the countries like the Israel and Iran too. So if the exceptionalism is given by the UN, or if the treatment would be there naturally at that time, they enjoy the more privilege, they try to dominate the other countries also. Well, including the countries like the Israel and the Iran, it will be there, the exceptionalism given to those countries. And they are very dominant now, most probably. So those are the defective approaches would be there, and the positive approaches we will see it. What is the positive approach of the globalization? Yes, there is a development, there is a GDP increase, and now everybody is enjoy it. The freedom is there, and economic status is grown over there, and many other factors has come, and people are educated, well educated, and they've got the good health because health sector is improved very much because of the international instruments made the country to domesticate their municipal laws by that, and everybody getting the free health cards in the insurance also. So these are the many aspects of it which are said to be the good perspectives of the globalization, are international relations as well as the foreign policy of a country. Number one, the global faith in universal dignity and inalienable rights that was mentioned in the preamble both in the UN Charter and the UDHR is implicit in the strong moral political rhetoric and declaration as exemplified in the article specifying the various rights of the beginning for the all and everyone, no one. So with this, indeed everybody counts and no one is to be substituted to the treatment violating the basic human dignity. So everyone will be given a right over there. That is a no man, all or everyone. These are the wordings are used, and hence the human dignity will be increased because of the international instrument and international relations as well as the foreign policy of a country. In what way the declaration may have finally been drafted, written in two ways in a hotel room in San Francisco by Eleanor Roosevelt and two assistants. It is a simple that all these words have a universal appeal. While this may not be the case in regard to all those who rule, it certainly applies to those who are ruled. So this draft of the human rights is first made by this Eleanor Roosevelt, who is the by sitting in the San Francisco with the help of somebody else, they drafted it. Of course, later on they had implemented in the 1948 in the form of the UDHR. In fact, just like a holy scripture such as the Bible, the Quran, and the Bhagavad Gita, the UDHR appeals to much wide circle of people than the cultural context in which it is originated. So the equal treatment will be given like a Bhagavad Gita and Quran, Bible. For the human right protection, this is a Bible. UDHR is the Bible. And appeals much wider circle people than the cultural context in which it is originated. Those who have ever carried the copies of the Universal Declaration to countries with a tyrannical regime know that in a cultural context entirely different from the West, there can be overwhelming demand of this document. So from that onwards, it is well, uh, mm, reverence will be given to this UDHR, more respect by the states, and they domesticated the provisions of the UDHR in their domestic laws also. So that was the well demanded would be there because of the globalization and international relations, making the a good foreign policy of a nation. The second point here, let me see. Notably, the whole venture of the programmatic rather than an immediately conquisitive nature. Anything will be sustainable development, and slowly it will come over there. The immediate change, even the people will not accept it. In fact, it all started with the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. Yes, that is the Bible of the human rights. This does not mean, however, that the term rights are as used here in the meant in the sense of the moral category of these moral rights could be distinguished from the legal rights. Moral rights are different and legal rights are different. Moral rights cannot be challenged in the court of the law, but the legal rights can be brought challenged in the court of the law. But equity principle will be applied in the moral right, and the natural law, the moral right would be applied over there, and the justice will be given in that manner. So, rightly signify the interest protected by law. The rights, what we do, it signifies interest to protect by law. Yes, the right says you are protected by the law, meaning a public and political responsibility towards their protection. So, what is that? A public and a political responsibility would be there for their protection, and in the same sense, human rights are not distinct from the other rights. They are also protected in the same manner as it is protected in the criminal law. It should be noted that the right never simply is self executing. Whenever the right is there, it will not be self executing. There will be a executing body would be there which will execute the right. So, executing indeed a realization of the one's rights under the law always requires an actor, an action that is applies to the declared the rights in a particular. So, if you're merely having a right is not I don't say not good. Merely having a right doesn't make any effectiveness. Coming to the point of its execution is concerned, at the time the right is a useless right. The right aim would be futile. 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 Futile means no reactions and failure. That is the meaning it will use. So, hence, although the downstream basis of the international human rights standards of other weak and upstream against may as well serve to actually the secure the fundamental freedoms and entitlement that are meant to be protected. So, a gap is made a very gap, and that will not make any nation to flourish. So that was the point which is made here. Downstream basis of the international human rights standards for rather weak. So, like the treatment of the downstream people are different, and high stream people are different. So, at that instance, naturally, there would be a very much human right violations would be there, because the right is might they will think, and they do have the money also. With the money they can do anything and everything, but money cannot do each and everything. Money could do something but not everything. Okay, let us come to the point. Hence, although the downstream basis of the international human rights standard is rather weak, the standard is weak because the implementation body is not that much strong enough, and there is no international police also. Upstream action may well serve to actually secure the fundamental freedoms and entitlement that are meant to be protected. And here they said clearly fundamental freedoms and other entitlement which are should be enjoyed by the every person, because every person is a human being, hence human being should have to enjoy it. What? International instrument. How? By taking the international instrument and domesticated in the municipal law. At the time, the municipal law, those who are inhabitants of that area will be enjoyed over there, and they will they utilize this opportunity to see that a peaceful state will be formed. That is the idea behind it. So now, can you read the third point here? This
Although the UN General Assembly Declaration do not routinely qualify as the international law, through periods of customary state practice and guided by a strong obvious juris,
opinio
established
juris.
legal opinion. Yes. This may well result in customary international law, in certain instances even regarded as the jus cogens,
Cogents, non-derogable
non
provisions of the
delog
international law. Okay.
yes,
Although UN General Assembly, what they did it, declaration don't routinely qualify as the international law. Whatever the declaration they make it out from time to time, not necessarily qualify as an international law, and because there may be non-binding rules also there and observations also there. Through period of the customary state practices, because there are many customary state practices are incorporated in the UNHR. That is the first 1948 declaration. It is incorporated even the customary state laws also, practices also, and guided by a strong opinion juris and established legal opinion also. They made very much clear, and they may well result in the customary international law, and they are thinking that the customary international law will be prevail over there, and it also act a good impact on the human rights if they follow the customary law in that manner. So here this applies, for example, to the right to life. Yes, everybody have the right to life and liberty also, a bodily integrity. Nobody should prohibit it to torture, and a due law process should be applied over there. If you want to arrest, if you want to do anything, yet even so, get just cogence enforced through the effective judicial remedies remain a huge challenges. So it became a high challenges for the judicial remedies will get it in the international law or international human rights law. So hence the downstream venture will always need linkage to upstream action on the part of those whose rights at the stake at the agency that support to them. So whose fundamental rights at the stake? Because the agencies and multinational companies, they will rule even the ruling party also, because they are the very strong and they are making more investment in the country, hence the regard will be paid to them, and some extra immunities also, exceptional cases also will be given to them. So it even get just cogence enforced through the effective judicial remedy should be there, remain a huge challenge. How can we make it out? Like tying the bell to the cat. It's a great challenge. Who will tie the bell to the cat so that the rats will be safe? So hence the downstream venture will always need link, linkage and upstream action on the part of those whose rights at the stake at the agency to support them. So always there will be a linkage would be there from weak to the strong and strong to the weak. Then only everybody will lead the life according to the changing pace of the society. Now let us see the fourth one. The International Human Rights Project was never intended as a separate venture. Okay? Aside from the regional and national mechanism, Europe has created a very strong regional system through the European Conventions on the Human Rights and the adjoining European Court of the Human Rights in Strasbourg, which is in France. And the regional mechanism in Africa or in the America are gradually being reinforced. In Africa, it is in Arusha. In America, it is there. I think the New York, if I not be mistaken. Let us see it. Even more importantly, national human rights institutions, supervisory commissions, and institutes play an increasing role to promote and protect the human rights. Moreover, as will be illustrated below, national legislatures and particularly national judiciary often manifest an activist attitude when it comes to the human rights implementation. Yes, all the human rights implementation will be done by a domestic or a municipal court only, but they do follow certain norms and principles while they are administrating or giving the judgment to the parties. Number fifth, despite its flaws from the legality perspective, there are many flaws would be there in the legality aspect too. International human rights law has created a strong notion of the global legitimacy. In spite of all the loopholes would be there, but still the price is there. Yes, it does something to protect it because of the international human rights must, and it will be a global legitimacy. It will be created over there based on the common standard of the justice and injustice. So what is the standard here is whether it is justice or injustice done it. So certain times, no, you will keep the rules also aside. Pragmatic approach will be taken and give the justice to the party, and justice only to be given, not given. It seems to be given. It looks to be given. It feels to be given. So that would be the point here. Justice and justice, they will say it. This implies that no use of power is considered legitimate. This implies that no use of power is considered legitimate. Why? Power is there. Definitely for the good cause is there. Yes, it should legitimate it. But for the unabused cause, where the abuse cause will be there, then it will be not recognized and it will be delegitimized that instance. If it violates the international human rights standards, yes. So legitimate or illegitimate, we will say at that instance when it is really violates the human rights, international human rights standards. At the time we can say whether they're legitimate or illegitimate. So it is particularly in the absence of a reliable global instrument for human rights enforcement that the international standards being behind human rights play an important part of the real civilizing mission. So in the state there would be implemented machinery would be there, a state police would be there to execute the action given by the or made by the courts. But when you come to these three regional centers where the cases are decided over there, there will not be that much strongness as in the municipal law we will find it. So it is particularly in the absence of a reliable global instrument for human rights enforcement that the international standards beyond human rights play an important part in the real civilizing mission. In the civilized country, if there is right is there, if the right is there, it should be protected over there. So law should be strong enough. If anybody violates the right, for its implementation, it will be strong enough to do it. Otherwise, people take it as easy. So, sixth point, let us see. Can we read the sixth point? Sakina.
Particularly through the support of international civil society linked to national NGOs in distinct contexts, international mechanisms for supervision of human rights compliance serve to bring concrete variation out into the open. Quid latet
Apperbit.
apparabit. Whatever is hidden is to be revealed, as Thomas of Celano put in its oration on the final judgment.
Daisire, Daisila. So, here what they said is sixth one. Particularly through the support of the international civil society. International civil society, there it comes NGOs also. linked with the NGOs, the distinct context, international mechanism for supervision of the human rights, that is the lacking one. Because each station should have to support to send the human rights report from time to time. And if they don't do it, it is there would not be any knowledge to the other people whether violation, human right violation was there or not. One nobody could knows it. So human rights compliance serve to bring a concrete violation out onto the open. So if there is no report would be there, naturally they are indulging the abuse of the human rights. So when you become a concrete violation should be there, naturally, definitely the Security Council may interfere it into the open. Quid, let it approbate. Whatever is hidden is to be revealed. So every year the report should be sent. How much it is abused or not abused or maintained or controlled. The state burden would be there to send the report to the International Commission. And here they said, as Thomas Celano put it in his peroration on the final judgment, they say, dice ira, dice illa. The same thing which is there. Everything should be revealed over there and nothing should be hidden, and try to protect and promote the human rights. If there are any violations, even by the other organization also, which are supervising the human right violations control. So now let us stop it today's because I am also exhausted. Yeah, Donati Maliba, what is the reason that you joined very late? What is the reason that you joined very late? So the next class, I believe it is on Friday. Yes, Friday I will wind up this one because the 7th is there, and of course only 7th is there. We can make it now also because still some minutes are there. Although the original language of the most document originating in the international human rights venture is a juridical and protective. So whatever the document are there in the international, the language it is a juridical and productive. In actual practice, the project it has at least political and transformational. So the project is not actually political or not transformational. Indeed, while the history of the civil and political rights is turned in particular to the protection of the citizens against the sovereignty who wants to rob them from their positions. Of course, if there is no such an instrument would be there, the people try to violate it, abuse it, and they will possess it also. Their position also will be taken by them, because if there is no such a protection would be there, our regular watch would not be there. In a third world context, the declaration of the function on the basis of the emancipation of the have-nots. So the emancipation means bringing to the knowledge, and where he will be grown, the growth will be seen. Like a man will be emancipated at the age of 18. He emancipated at the completion of the 18. That we will use such a terminology. Thus, in the struggle for the public justice, yes. Do you want to ask anything question? Shall I proceed?
Yes.
Okay. Thus, in the struggle for the public justice, international human rights provide not just a legal resources as based on a positive law, but also political means anchored in the public legitimacy. Yes, because of the two covenants are there, that is the civil and political rights covenants and the human rights covenants, civil rights covenants. There they strengthen it and legitimate it. Additionally, human rights function not merely to protect the people with the regard to the freedom and entitlement they have already acquired, but in their emancipatory struggle to socio-political transformation also. It is not only the promotion production of the human rights would be there, but they are emancipated socially, politically. There should be transformation should be there, and it should be seen, and it's come out. Then only you can say yes, it is human rights impact would be there, and international instrument impact are there, international relations impact are there, and the foreign policy impact are there, and hence we can say transformation is taking place in the social and political arena also. Hence, the whole picture of the efforts of the multifaceted perspective based on the civilizational commitment at most important. So here, multifaceted perspectives, not one perspective, multifaceted perspective based on the civilizational and commitment of the utmost importance to promote and protect the human rights. In the absence of the reliable global mechanism, the global mechanism is must and mandatory. In the absence of the global mechanism for the enforcement of the human rights, international human rights laws and principles have to be connected first and foremost. So the machinery should be made strong enough and the implementation should be done in international human rights law, and principles have to be connected first and foremost to national institutions and mechanism with power to enforce these standards in this while from an international legal perspective, state sovereignty may well be seen as an obstacle in a national context, it may be well constitute a basis for the effective implementation. This does, however, require a functioning rule of law in the state first place. So, a state should have to make it a first place to see that a rule of law will be applied over there. If the state subjects only, if the state executive machinery, if the state executive, if they are violating it at the time, we will remember that a lawmaker should not be a lawmaker. A lawbreaker should a lawmaker should not be a lawbreaker. I repeat, a lawmaker should not be a lawbreaker. If the state itself is committing, or the state machinery, or the state executive, or state body is violating it, the abuse of the human rights, at that instance, no one can help it. And definitely the Security Council will interfere it and they will take their economic sanctions or many other sanctions against the state, which openly violating the human rights concern. So, require a functioning rule of law in the first place. A rule of law would be there, the first place rule. What is the rule of law says? No one is above the law, everyone is equal to the law, either rich or poor, or either red or either white or black, either in whatever the color would be there, whatever the civilization is there, either poor or a rich, it will be the equal before the law and equal protection will be given. That is the rule of law would be applied over there. Yes, this is the where we can make the what is the offensive approach, what is the defensive approach of the human rights when you speak about the human rights, international relations, as well as the foreign policy of a nation is concerned. And we studied it almost all, we covered the portion of it because if you happen to see problem of applicability in the international law and international politics is nothing but international relations, if the parties of politics and their impact on the human rights, how the human rights would be impact are there, but the plus points are there and negative points are there, but when you compare the both of them, the plus points are more. At that instance, the global level or international relations, international politics, international studies, and the foreign policy of each country definitely will contribute and to promote and protect the human rights in each country. If each country follows the same method would be there on the planet Earth, there would be a peace, security, and the health on the planet Earth will be moored, and that is the motto of the UNO, and it's formed over there with that regard. There would not be a third world war. So again, we will see some of the points if it is needed over there, and I will prepare the again 15 questions to you for the test. Then I will submit to you. And if you have any doubt that you can ask me. So Friday class, okay, let us see because Friday class is Mapema 5:10. Is 5:10 to 6? No. Okay, we can finish it. In case if I am not going to take it, then I will inform you in advance. But if I don't take it, my food will not be digested. This is another thing. At least, but today I taught it 4 times. That's why I a bit exhausted today. My
Tanzania na watu